people talk about, oh, I don't want to put money in this and that, it might lose. What they're saying is, I don't want to put money in the S&P 500, it might temporarily drop. What they do is they choose stability over long-term security. And by trying to avoid temporary declines, they almost guarantee long-term loss because inflation gradually erodes their purchasing power. That's true loss. It doesn't come back. We rarely see prolonged times of deflationary periods. Money, it doesn't matter what unit of currency, almost all units of currency gradually loses value over time due to inflation and other factors. So it's about protecting our income, our purchasing power. That has to be the focus, whether it's in our investments or, as you said, even as in our careers.
And we are back on the Money, the Mindset, and Mentoring podcast. We're super excited here to have Chad Hufford of Veritas, Alaska. Chad, man, you are an absolute rock star. We first obviously really bonded on the idea of you and jiu-jitsu. And that was a great first conversation to talk about that. I was really excited. And then when we started diving deep into what you help people with, I was like, man, we are so aligned on so many topics. So it's really great to have you to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I appreciate you. So one of the things, well, let's first start off actually with introducing yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about Chad.
So born and raised here in Alaska, husband, father, 6 kids. We've got quite an adventurous life, living in the last wilderness here. Started Veritas Wealth Management about 17, 18 years ago. At the very beginning of the global financial meltdown. I'm sure everybody can remember that. I had a kid on the way, terrible timing, but it was, I'm glad I did it. We've been able to help a lot of families plan for their future, create a retirement income they don't have to worry about outliving, and most of all, make sure that they don't run out of money or purpose in retirement. That's been a big part, is making sure that people don't just have the wealth side figured out, but also the mindset figured out, that they still have some purposeful pursuit. And so it's really been, it's more wealth coaching than anything else. Yes, we do the financial planning. Yes, we do the investment management, but it's about coaching the mindset. It's about coaching behavior, building healthy habits. Because as you know, whether it's jujitsu, whether it's physical health, whether it's running a business, it's, executing those things every single day doesn't happen overnight, and changing the behavior from the inside out.
Absolutely right. And one of the things that we talked about on our last conversation was the idea of, how to look at what you're doing today in order to look at for the future. And I think you said it really well. And I just wanted to come from you and get your perspective on what do we do today to set ourselves up for the future in a mindset perspective.
Well, we talk about the idea of having a financial blueprint, something that helps clarify and identify long-term goals, but then reverse engineers those goals into the moment. Because we often lack is a connection between how do our current actions impact our future self? Again, whether that's our health, whether that's financial. So from a financial standpoint, we help people create a financial blueprint that connects their current actions to their future goals, who they say they want to become, where they want to be in the future.
Yeah, and I think when you talked about that, you first of all started talking about setting targets and the idea of, should I be setting my target around money? Like, what should I be setting my target around?
Well, it's both. So we first ask people to identify what is important in their life, like what is meaningful. What do they want their life to feel like when they walk through their front door the day after they retire? Who's in the house? Where's the house? Like what's the ambiance, the atmosphere? What are the things that they want in their life that they aren't doing right now? What are the things that they have to do right now that they don't want to be doing? So it's designing their life, but then attaching specific financial goals to that, because money never tells you enough. And we want to have finite, specific, measurable goals, because for people like you and I, the people we talk with that are more ambitious, more goal focused, sometimes they need a regulator, not just something to motivate them and get them moving forward, but something that says, okay, we don't have to do more. There's a time where you say, we've put in the work this month. We can also enjoy the moment a little bit too. So a blueprint not only helps keep us on track, keeps us motivated, but it also allows us to balance serving ourselves in the future, but still living in the present today.
I love it. I love it. And I think, one of the things you're really honing in on is that don't make money the target. Make the target the target. And the target, what you were saying, as you said, I love that idea of sort of thinking about you're walking in the front door, you've just retired or whatever it is that moment when you said specifically, who's around you? Where are you? What does that look like? And I think that as a starting point for people setting targets, I think that's very powerful because it takes the money out of it. Because I think, one of the things we kind of chatted about a little bit was that money's sort of, I'm not going to say money's meaningless, but money has an ever changing value. And so talk a little bit about that.
Before we do, I just want to step back real quick. Sorry, Steve, but we've already used the idea of money, the financial blueprint. But think about like building a house. You're not excited about the tools. You're not excited about the plywood and the hammer and the nails and the siding. I mean, maybe some people are, I don't know. But most of us, we're excited about the home. We're excited about what the tools and materials build. Wealth is the tool. Your investments, those are the materials. So wealth and money, those are the tools that we use to build our financial house. What we get excited about should be not the tools, but what the tools create: independence, freedom, dignity, flexibility. That's what we're building towards. The tool is just the means to get there.
I absolutely love that. And one of the sayings that I say quite often is to the idea, because I think there's a lot of people who look at money with a very negative context and they, oh, I don't need too much, or, money doesn't buy happiness, or any of these things that they think about. And the idea is to repurposing the idea around money as a tool. And so the idea is to make money matter, you have to make money matter. And so to make money matter, you're saying it's a tool to focus, to build you what matters.
Yes.
And I think that is extremely powerful words.
And it's no wonder that people have sometimes a negative connotation with money, because a lot of times growing up, the only time you heard about money was when there wasn't enough, or when somebody was fighting about it, when mom and dad were arguing, or when the bills couldn't be paid. So a lot of times money is only present under negative circumstances. And then today we have this culture too, that there's a tendency for some people to think that there's a fixed pie, where if you have a big piece of pie, then you must have stolen that from somebody else's piece, which simply is not true.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, I think, pervasive in our culture. That there's something wrong with being wealthy. Now, there is something wrong with being selfish. There's something wrong with being manipulative with your money. So because money is a tool, it is amoral. It is not good nor bad. Just like a scalpel is not good or bad. A surgeon can use it to save a life. A maniac can use it to take a life. So we can be abusive with money, but we have to look at money as is simply the object. It's how we use it, who we are as a person, and how we behave, our attitudes towards it. That's the difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is when you look at money, it has a changing value as well. It's not something that a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. And that's something to kind of think about.
No, absolutely. And sorry, I took us off track there because you already brought that up. I think that's one of the huge mistakes people make, is when we think of money, we actually envision currency and units of currency. And people say, well, I just had this conversation yesterday. I want to be conservative. I want to conserve my units of currency, is simply what this person was saying. And I said, well, what we need to do is conserve your long-term income, the purchasing power of your money, the purchasing power of your currency, the units of currency that float through the day-to-day values, not super important. It's the amount of purchasing power that somebody has for the rest of their life, starting at the day that they retire, or if you want to look at the work optional lifestyle, the day that they achieve financial independence. How much purchasing power can their investments produce over their lifetime?
You said two really interesting things, and the first thing is the idea of not maintaining a amount of money, but maintaining an amount of purchasing power. And that's really interesting when you look at tax planning or anything around that. In Canada, we have these things called RRSPs, which is something that allows you to save for the future. But then when you pull it out, you're paying tomorrow's tax on it. And so you kind of got to you're either going to get hit now or you're going to hit later. Well, if you want to have the same purchasing power in the future, on an after-tax basis, you got to kind of put that into that strategy. So the idea of maintaining purchase power allows you to ask questions that maybe people normally aren't thinking.
it allows people to ask the right questions. Because again, this is about financial independence, about freedom. And a lot of times people try to protect or stabilize the wrong variable. People are trying to stabilize or protect their current principal, not their future purchasing power. So when we
Mm.
bring a fixed income into a rising cost world, and unfortunately, that's what my industry has taught people. This is safe. Bonds, cash, things that are stable, but stable is not safe. Comfortable does not equal security. And when we are bringing fixed incomes into an increasing cost world, it can actually be a recipe for disaster. And it's caused by people focusing on the wrong variable. They're fighting the wrong battle, and they're trying to stabilize and protect units of currency instead of long-term purchasing power.
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the things that when we step even outside of the world of investing and we look at choosing career paths, it's very difficult, especially given this last few years of just the eye-opening experience that we went through as a culture in the US and in Canada, really around the world,
Yeah.
with this massive inflation that we had. I mean, if you have a job as a teacher, as as a firefighter or paramedic or whoever else you are, where you've been comfortable with the income that you're getting on a monthly basis. Now that your income hasn't changed, but your costs sure have. And so that thing that you originally looked at as stable is actually the biggest threat to what it looks like for you in the future.
And just think of it like this. I mean, stable income in a rising cost world is gradually losing money.
Hmm.
And people talk about, oh, I don't want to put money in this and that. It might lose. What they're saying is, I don't want to put money in the S&P 500. It might temporarily drop. What they do is they choose stability over long-term security. And by trying to avoid temporary declines, they almost guarantee long-term loss because inflation gradually erodes their purchasing power. That's true loss. It doesn't come back. We rarely see prolonged times of deflationary periods. Money, it doesn't matter what unit of currency, almost all units of currency gradually loses value over time due to inflation and other factors. So it's about protecting our income, our purchasing power. That has to be the focus, whether it's in our investments or, as you said, even as our in our careers.
Yeah, no,
Like
careers, 100%.
who wants to sign up for a job that promises to never give you a raise? But but people do that in their investments all the time by freezing and trying to stabilize their principal. They end up reducing the ability to give themselves a raise in the future.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the times when we look at it's not fundamental to the idea of their career or their investment or anything. It's fundamental to a mindset shift that needs to happen in looking at the difference between that conservative, and I'm not talking politically conservative, but I'm talking more like protectionist sort of mindset. I use that as the word I like using in that is scarcity, is that they
Mm-hmm.
have a scarcity mindset. In other words, they got this little thing and they need to protect it. It's scarcity versus the mindset of abundance. And the mindset of abundance is yes, there's risk out there, but that risk is going to get me to something greater. I mean, a very simple analogy would be to the idea of relationships, the idea of talking to people you don't know. A lot of times people have the scarcity mindset that they don't want to build their network. They don't want to get to meet new people because they just want to, they have a smaller group of people and that's where their world is. Whereas if they would reach out and meet that new person, that could change their life forever. And so the idea of just opening that next door and meeting the next person, that's an abundant. And then sharing with that person with abundance and really growing together. That is the next level of growth when you look at that. Now, that applies to relationships, that applies to your employment, and that certainly applies to the way that you're looking at when you're dealing with your wealth.
And it's a great perspective, I think, to have on life in general because too many people go from growth to protect. They're in this mindset of growth where I'm making impact. I'm trying new things. I'm taking risks. Sometimes it's emotional risk. Sometimes it's financial risk. Sometimes it might be physical risk. But they're trying to improve. And then at some point, they just try to protect. It's like a mother hen. And it's I look at it as, are you playing to win? Or are you playing to not lose? And
Mm,
you and I have both rolled with people on the mat where they they're playing to not lose. They're not trying to win a match. They're just trying to not lose it. And it's a completely different thing. It's not semantics. Somebody who is playing to not lose is coming from a place of scarcity, not abundance. Absolutely could not agree more.
absolutely. And when you look at that from the jiu-jitsu thing, I think I'm with you 100% on that, because I know when I'm coaching people into their tournaments, you can see visually them doing it. Now, the other thing that you brought up, which was interesting, is that you went to abundance when you talk about having 6 kids. Like, that is abundance, man. And the idea of parenting, that's another thing that plays into, as your kids are in their youth and that sort of thing, we do everything to expose them to certain things, but then protect them from others. But as they develop that ability to reason and make choices, the more things that we can actually expose them to, the better off they're going to be later in life. And in exposing them to, in the perspective of allowing them to make decisions.
Allowing them to make decisions and allowing them to fail. I think so often we try to protect our kids from failure, but failure is a great source of feedback if we can teach our kids to learn from it, to view it as an experiment, not a detriment. Whereas, okay, yeah, things didn't go the way you planned, but what can we learn from that? Can we change something? Can we prepare more next time? Or was it something that actually we did our best and things just didn't work out? Let's try that exact same thing again, and maybe we'll get a different outcome. But we try to protect our kids from failure. And I think what ends up happening is we reinstill that scarcity mindset, because failure is not what causes people to not reach their dreams. It's doubt, it's fear. It's the fear of failure that I think is much more damaging than the failure itself.
Totally agree. I mean, if you think again, if we think about those children, when a child is born, think about the risk they put themselves into. They've came out of this really comfortable spot. Now they're out and they have to breathe every day. Just breathing that's a risk right there. Then the next risk is then they're going to start crawling. Huge risk. They're lying on their back. They're pretty darn comfortable. They get carried everywhere. But for some reason, they're like, I'm going to stop being carried everywhere. And now I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to eat. I might choke on something. I'm not going to walk. So we look at kids' risk tolerance for the first 4 years of their life is massive. And we don't give them enough credit for the idea of the amount of risk they take. Because then what happens is the rest of our lives, we're programmed, don't do that. The stove's hot. Don't do this. Don't go outside. There's and we start putting up all these don'ts, and the don'ts start deprogramming them from that risk tolerance of a heightened risk tolerance of a child to a very sort of scarcity mindset of, I gotta watch what I'm doing on a daily basis. And I'm not saying operate it without intent or operate in reckless abandon, but I'm saying that our risk tolerance could be so much greater than maybe what we give, to the world.
Well, and I think in that process, we train dreaming out of somebody, because when you're a little kid, you're a superhero, you're a cowboy, you're a firefighter, whatever. Like you're a hero, and you're a king, you're a queen, you're a prince, whatever. But we have these dreams, and then pragmatism and practicality slowly creep in and kill off those dreams. By the time we're adults, we've forgotten how to do it because we're so afraid of uncertainty. We're so afraid of the unknown that we would a lot of times choose the knowns that we don't like. We choose the evil we do know rather than stepping out into the good that we don't. And I think a lot of that stems from that inability to tolerate ambiguity. And you're right. Early in life, we don't have that. No child is like, I'm trying to walk. I just fell down 7 or 8 times. Dad, I'm not going to do this anymore.
I'm done.
Everything to them is a risk, and they keep falling, but they don't know any different because nobody has trained them that you're supposed to be afraid of falling. Nobody has trained them that you're supposed to be afraid of skinning your knee or something. Kids don't care. My kids have cuts and scrapes in their blood all the time. Like they don't know.
They don't know. Exactly. I wonder, and again, I'm not any bit of a psychologist or anything around this, but I wonder if the idea is that, because I think a lot of the times when somebody is coached or conditioned to avoid something that's going to help somebody grow with a chance of risk, they're doing it out of love, but they're also doing it in a position of pain and hurt. And so they're projecting through the idea of love and care the hurt that happened to them. And I wonder if the reason why we allow kids to crawl and we allow kids to do all of those things is because we actually forget that time period in our life. So we actually have an inability to be able to project the hurt of that time that we fell 50 times as a child. So we can't kind of relate to it. We just assume that that's something that they need to do. So that ability to project the hurt that happened then is just not built into our DNA. But the things that we remember, we do project.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of it too is, I hate to say it, but I think it's selfishness on the parents' part. It's really hard to see a kid hurting. It's hard to see a kid fail. It's hard to see a kid get up and give a speech and stumble through it. And you're like, you feel embarrassment for that kid. But I think as a parent, you need to be willing. We need to be to watch our kids go through pain, to watch them suffer, to watch them fail. And I think sometimes we protect them. And if we're really honest, it's not protecting them for their sake, it's protecting them for our sake, because we don't want to go through the discomfort of watching our kids suffer.
I agree with you 100%. That again is almost, I wouldn't say a selfish thing, but it's something that we have to identify that it's not for them.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
As people who have children, I know I have 3, you have 6. When you had 6, let's just talk about that. I mean, I came from a family of 6, and when did you just say like, let's go? That's a very, in our area where I live, it would be considered very uncommon to have 6. Was that something that was a planned idea, or was that something just like, let's go?
It wasn't planned. It was something, I think both of us came from fairly large families, so it was something that we were open to. There's a weird sense of completeness that happened when we had 3. Like when our 3rd child was born, I felt like we're a pretty well-rounded family, but then God had other plans for us, and we had a 4th fairly soon after. He was actually diagnosed with a terminal chromosomal condition. They said that he probably wouldn't survive pregnancy. He's not going to make it to his 1st birthday. We just celebrated his 10th birthday.
Man.
So sorry, getting a little emotional, but so like I there's a sense even after that, like, oh my goodness, God gave us one more, and like he beat all these odds, all these obstacles. And then there was a gap, and we actually had several years where nothing happened. We looked at potentially adopting and things like that, and then 2 more showed up. So man plans his ways, God directs his steps. We've got 6 now. I think that's probably it, but who knows? We were in Hawaii just a few weeks ago, and one of our kids was like, we need to adopt a little brother or sister. And like it just kind of came out of nowhere. We're just sitting there on the beach.
Yeah, you almost have your own little hockey team now going. So you maybe need 1 or 2 more, and you can hit the football team.
Yeah. At least have some substitutes, so everybody doesn't stay on the ice all the time.
That's right. Exactly. And now with the idea of, we talked a little bit about setting goals. We talked to you in the goals being around the why, not around the tool, which the tool is money. I think knowing where the tool needs to sit, I think, is important, like how to use the tool and the functional awareness of what the tool needs to be, but really understanding what is that building. And I think that is really critical. Then looking at the next thing is saying that, well, that tool, we think it's a hammer, and it always will be a hammer, it's an ever shrinking hammer. Mm-hmm. And, there's many more nails that are going to keep on popping up. And so how do we make that, give us the same stability of being able to build while it's a radically changing environment? It's not a stable situation. And then the last thing that we look at is we say, okay, as the individual, we have to analyze ourselves today and say, in the moment we are right now, while we might feel that we are comfortable, we have to become comfortable with not being comfortable so we can attain what we need to get to in the future.
Yes, Nick Murray calls that, the author Nick Murray calls that rationality under uncertainty, saying, I don't know what the future is going to bring, but I need to be prepared to step out into the unknown rather than being stuck in the fear of the uncertainty. And again, it's a tolerance for ambiguity and being able to be uncomfortable in the moment so you can have more security in the future.
It's interesting when we talk about the ambiguity, because it's a human condition, I think, when you look at chaos versus structure. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that most people think that they want true freedom. And when I talk about true freedom, freedom of rules, freedom of everything. I'm talking, cloud cuckoo land. We have no rules, like from the Lego land. But then they start slapping some rules on it. It's like, well, we need some rules. And I think society is sort of similar in that way, is that the idea is that, yes, we want absolute freedom and absolute freedom to do anything, but the constraints allow us to find direction and purpose. And so by bridling ourselves with either a morality or bridling ourselves with a structure of financial direction or a structure of relationships, by bridling ourselves with those things today, it allows us to achieve that success we're looking at tomorrow, that is that freedom moment. Like you said very early on, you said, and I forget the exact word that you used, but you said it's like, you don't have to work, but if you want to keep on working. There was a word you used for that.
Yeah, a job optional lifestyle
A job optional.
where
Yeah, I love that.
where you have independence from a paycheck. But to your point, we need structure, we need purpose, we need meaningful pursuit. So, the idea of financial independence being 30 years of Saturdays is, number one, it's not a big enough goal to make all the sacrifices to get there. It's not meaningful enough. That's why, to your point earlier, it's about making lifestyle goals, then attaching money to that. But yeah, we need structure, and I think a lot of times what people see as restriction can actually produce freedom. I'm sure you're familiar with Jocko Willink. He has a book where he talks about that, where discipline equals freedom. And think about like a budget or a calendar. It's not telling you what you can't do. It's prioritizing the most important things so those things do get done. It's directing your money, your energy, your time into the most important aspects of your life so those don't get missed. It's not about what you can't do. It's what absolutely must be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree 100% with that. And yes, Jocko Willink, beast. I love him. Also fellow jiu-jitsu player. So he's definitely on the list. Definitely on the list.
Well, I actually met him a couple years ago, and like he's just like this large. Even his hands, he's got these huge hands, and everything about him is like, man, he's his presence. But yeah, he embodies that, and whether it's working out, whether it's eating healthy, you're adding constraints onto today. You're making a little sacrifice today, but you're producing freedom in the future. Because yeah, working out is hard, but so is being obese, so is having joints that don't work. So we have to be willing to take some temporary pain, some temporary uncertainty to provide more freedom and abundance in the future.
I totally agree with that. Now, when people are looking at doing that, and they're saying, okay, whether it's chatting with you about, the fitness space, because I know you could talk about that for days, and health and that sort of thing. But when they're talking about their setting up a financial plan and saying that the financial plan isn't just numbers, knowing that it has to be baselined with numbers, as we talked about, bridling it with process. How do they get a hold of you? Like, what is the next steps? What would they do with you? What would the next step look like if they wanted to talk with you?
So people can reach out, veritasalaska.com, and we have people all over the United States that we work with. It's not just Alaska, but they can even send an email to ask@veritasalaska.com. And we begin the process with clarifying long-term goals, lifestyle goals, and then attaching money, because money is easy to measure, attaching monetary or financial goals to those lifestyle goals, then reverse engineering from where they want to be, where they are, creating a course in between.
I love it. I love it. Now, when they invest with you, if they did decide to invest with you, because you're in Alaska, does that mean there will be no meltdowns that'll ever happen with the money? Or
Gosh, I hope there's some meltdowns. We could certainly use some. All I see is snow and ice everywhere. No, our job is not to help you miss the storms, is to help you weather the storms. And again, it's rationality under uncertainty. There will be plenty of financial crashes that we're all going to live through together, but it's to weather those periods and to come out stronger on the other side, not to try to miss them or avoid them.
I love it. I love it. Chad, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. You've dropped some absolute bombs on the audience today for them to really think about, and I really hope they do reach out to you. And again, that's veritasalaska.com is the website, and Chad Hufford is his name. And guys, reach out to him because he's just a wealth of knowledge, and it's been a true pleasure chatting with you today.
Steve, it's been a pleasure for me as well. It's been an uplifting conversation, and hope it's encouraging and also exhorting for your audience, that it motivates them to move and take control of their future.
Beautiful. And I look forward to seeing you on the mats as well at some point.
All right. right.
Let's do it. And guys, this is the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. We thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you on the next one.